Coming up on this update, tapes. Tapes, 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 cassettes, also tapes, more tapes and some cassettes. And did I mention tapes? Hey, welcome back. You're at Ground Zero Salem with your good friend and host and confidant, Patrick J. Ground Zero Salem. This is my basket of tapes that I play in my kitchen on my Jambox, and I'm going to go through them with you, or at least most of them. A lot of these are 2020 releases or recent releases. It's all stuff that, most of it's stuff that I've picked up in the past 6 months or so, give or take. There's some classic shit in here, going back to, 80s stuff. Varying genres. I've been really into death rock and crust punk, kind of hardcore, again, as of late. Genres that I'm well familiar with, but I'm kind of falling back in love with all over again, because that's what being a music nerd's all about. But got some other stuff in here. Got some stuff for the metalheads out there. I just want to talk about tapes, man. So let's talk about some tapes. Up first is a band called Swordwielder, which is a quality name. As far as a crust band that sounds a lot like Amebix goes, you can't get a much better name than Swordwielder. It definitely has that pummeling, desperate, but also triumphant, building and building kind of riff thing that Amebix had on their classic albums. Not completely a total clone band. There's a few more modern trappings with production and a few other approaches to songwriting that are outside of that direct sphere of influence, but they like Amebix a lot, you can tell, and there's nothing wrong with that. Came out last year on Profane Existence, so check it out, especially if you feel a way about listening to Amebix now. I'll just leave that there. Next you got Chain Whip, a 2020 demo. Their record from last year was really good. It's, certain words fail me, I feel like if I say meat and potatoes or like stripped down or bare bones hardcore one more time, I'm gonna break my own glasses with my fist out of frustration with myself. But that's what this is. This is raw, pissed off, desperate 82 style hardcore. We're talking bands from the Midwest and the East Coast that had negative in the name. Look no further than that. If you want to look into maybe some 2000 stuff like 86 Mentality and Black Sheep Squadron, that's there too. There's a little bit more of a pronounced Oi influence on a couple of tracks. A few of the tracks are really fast. Chain Whip is awesome. I mean, there's very, very well written, well thought out songs on this. I don't mean to do it a disservice by saying it's just a genre study. Like, there's some really quality riffs and hooks and everything on this bad boy. It's a Vancouver band from Canada. It seems like they'd fit in really well with the Pittsburgh scene, with Blood Pressure and Heavy Discipline, that record that just came out on Painkiller, who else? No Time, all that stuff. Chain Whip, real good, really cool artwork too. The chain Ouroboros there, that's neat, like that. I got a bunch of Caligari stuff. Usually the stuff Ignacio puts out and curates, there's at least a few releases that make it onto some sort of album of the year thing for me. If it's not official, at least like mentally in my head, I really dig this band, this project, one person project. Not sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. It's Marthe, Marthe. Italian project, drummer from Horror Vacui. Let's see, what's her name? Marzia. She also plays in a couple of D-beat bands, I guess I haven't had a chance to check out. This is her metal project. One person deal. Awesome kind of like epic Viking Bloodfire Death, Hammerheart influence kind of stuff, but super raw and super punk. Also has elements of some sacrilege in there. Very fucking fun listen. Blown out, but it's one of those instances where it being kind of blown out in a bedroom recorded is like a genuine thing and doesn't detract from the music at all. You know, it's not like a lot of punk bands, I feel like, go for that like noisy thing, and it's to mixed degrees of success. You know, this is like recorded on a Tascam and fucking sounds awesome. It has just enough noisy elements to it to like give it some atmosphere. Then you got The Passing from LA. This is like black metal and punk rock in equal amounts. There's a lot of that like kind of 1-2 1-2 1-2 kind of pogo punk rhythmic elements to it. You know, super venomous black metal style vocals. I'm kind of hit or miss a lot with like the raw black metal meets D-beat or punk kind of thing. I feel like other types of metal mix with that style of punk a little bit better, but the Passing pulls it off perfectly. It's a lot of alliteration there. Very, very fucking good, like super catchy and enjoyable. I can't so much get into stuff like Raspberry Bulbs, which is more like a falling apart kind of thing. But these folks do it really, really fucking well. In a similar vein, you have Witchward, who are from Texas. A little bit more of a circle pit inducing rhythmic approach as opposed to the 1-2 1-2 and like D-beat kind of stuff, but still very fucking punky black metal and very fucking enjoyable as well. Another 2020 release. Kind of almost like early primal thrash, coming from that sort of a approach to black metal, as well as kind of a hardcore punk deal. Then Clairvoyance. This is the first demo that they've done, demo 20, self-titled. Cool purple shell there. Ukrainian and Polish band. It's a cool project from what I read in the blurb. It's the members, this is their first like pure death metal thing. They played in other types of bands, and it seems like a fun project. Like it feels like people that are passionate about like Finnish death metal and autopsy, which is a popular thing to be into nowadays, but for good reason, because that stuff is great. And I have heard enough that sounds like this. I will say that like the song quality, the riff quality of it is a super fun listen. It's not overtly complex, you know, nor is it like kind of insulting to my intelligence, like a lot of the kind of quote unquote like caveman death metal stuff that's come out. Just good, solid, meaty riffs, you know, strong love for autopsy is apparent. The only thing I could do without with is like maybe I'm just kind of the over the falling down a well cavernous Craig Pillard kind of death metal vocals. I love vocals like that, but I just don't need to hear that anymore myself. Like that's just me. You know, if it had something like a drier like Chuck Schuldiner or something like a more straightforward, I don't know, like dude from Sinister or something like that, you know, I'd be more into it. And that's just my personal preference of what I've been in the mood for is in terms of death metal lately. But if that sounds like something you're into, if you're super stoked on like all that OSDM stuff, it's a quality recording. Oh yeah, and one last Caligari there, Dodskvad, Kronike 1. So this has members of Obliteration from Norway, who are great death metal band. This is a little bit more black metal, but it's more of like a raw epic black metal sort of thing. Not really the same deal as that other band, the other project Marthe, but it's a little bit more along the lines. It reminds me of Sacrifix. It reminds me of Faust Coven. It's got that like weird like tri-state area of doom, death, and black. It's hard to place, you know, like sometimes really long, drawn out, droney riffs, but then riffs that almost go into a classical metal kind of hook that get kind of intricate. Yeah, definitely really fucking good. I wish it was longer. But it has that heavy, crushing, slow kind of black metal approach that the aforementioned had. And you don't hear too many bands like that coming along these days, you know. Faust Coven and Sacrifix are pretty singular. All right, so that's all newer stuff. And I think there's some more newer stuff the further down I'll get into this. But let's hop into some classics for a minute here. I got Christian Death's Catastrophe Ballet. Second Christian Death full length. Second one, the one after this was the last one with Roz. I like it. I mean, I've been an Only Theater of Pain purist for a long time. You know, this starts to involve more like weird organs and slower songs and more just kind of moody elements to it, and that's fine. There's no Rick Agnew on it though, so it's a lot less fucking punk. And that's fine. You know, it's still a fine death rock record. You still have those great like pained, whiny vocals of Roz Williams on it. This is I don't know what year this came out. It says 89 on here, but that seems like it was kind of late because Only Theater of Pain came out in 84, 85. I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't research it. This came out on Dutch East India Trading. Remember them? Then The Cure, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. You know, I never owned this back in the day. I don't really like it that much. I hate to say it. I mean, it's got some tracks for sure. Just Like Heaven, of course. Hot, Hot, Hot. A couple of other songs on it, but man, it's so long. And like, I'm just such a big fan of like the really, really early Cure stuff. I'm such a big fan of 17 Seconds era Cure and the Head on the Door, up to Head on the Door. I'd say this is when they started getting a little bit more like upbeat and stuff, which is fine. Like, I think they were brilliant to do that. And, you know, did a lot of more like happy pop oriented songs, but for me, this really ain't it. Like, maybe it'll grow on me. I don't know. I always heard it. I had a friend in 7th grade that always tried to talk me up about this record specifically, and I was just kind of like, you know, if he would have introduced me to Primary back then, maybe I would have been more open-minded about music. I don't know. Anyways, Epileptic Terror Attack. This is like a discography cassette. Swedish band from the late 90s into the early 2000s. They were awesome. I feel like they got overshadowed by DS13 a lot, who I think they toured over in the United States more. ETA did do a split with Tear It Up, though, and they're basically a Swedish band doing a big homage to American hardcore. A lot of 7 Seconds and Minor Threat, early DC hardcore kind of styles are honored on this. There's still some sort of Swedish influence kind of just leaking through via osmosis. You know, there's a little bit of Mob 47, maybe a little bit of Anti-C-Max in there, but very, very fun, catchy, like, for lack of a better term, like early posi-core almost. And this is everything they recorded. I ordered some stuff from Singapore, I believe, when I ordered the Paranoid discography, and shipping was pretty expensive, but all the tapes and everything were cheap, so I figured I might as well get my money's worth and get a bunch of these. I saw ETA a few times, 3 times actually, over in England, touring with DS13, and they were awesome every single time. I'm trying to think. I know that the members went on to be in, I think it was the Cola Freaks and another band that's escaping me, but they went on to be in more kind of garagey punk bands after this. Good stuff, though. Then we got a couple of bootlegs that my friend was distroing. Das Boot tapes. Little AF boots there. This is the Stalin with Stop Jap Naked. The Stalin is classic Japanese punk stuff. I needed to get my hands on some kind of version of this at some point. There are a bunch of vinyl bootlegs of this kind of floating around for a while, and I always slept on them, so I'm happy to finally get this. It's very early to mid-80s punk, and it's not quite at the breakneck hardcore kind of speed yet. You know, it's not Gauze and Bastard and stuff like that. Those bands were from kind of different time periods anyway, but it's more like kind of steadfast, like almost like, it's hard to explain because it's Japanese and what can you compare it to? More along the pace of like faster Ramones songs, I guess, but very, very just like energetic and fucking jump up in the air kind of fucking punk rock from Japan. And catchy. One of those things where you find yourself singing along and you know you don't speak the language, you know? Gotta love that. And then 45 Grave, the 1980 demo. Half of this has vocals, half of it's instrumental. Super early primal 45 Grave stuff. You've got Surf Bat on there. You're My Favorite, Choices, Dream Hits, Paint It Black, Anti-M, one of my favorites. Anti. Yeah, great early death rock, morbid punk stuff from LA. 1980. I was 2, and I'm not young. That's when this came out. Then you've got a pretty nice like repro of the Hellcrusher 1992 demo, which is self-titled. Crust from the UK. The only other record I have by them right now is Doomsday Hour, and I'm getting a couple more because they're a pretty great band and pretty important. Saw them once with Caress in the UK, and the Doomsday Hour records, like, it's pretty upbeat and fast, like crust punk. It's not too far removed from like Doom. It has some like slower, heavier kind of parts, like more metallic elements. This is they must have a different singer, or their singer just hadn't quite started growling yet. It's more pure UK hardcore kind of stuff. A lot more Discharge leaning with like a few metallic moments here and there. It's fairly crusty, but it's way more hardcore leaning than their other stuff. Good shit. I mean, it's 14 songs. It's an album length cassette. You know, it's nice and raw, but you can discern everything in the mix. High energy, really good. All right, a few more 2020 releases here. This is the Detractors, self-titled release. Came out on Desolate Records out of Minneapolis. Cool, crusty punk band with some heightened kind of metal elements here and there. There's some kind of guitar work that reminds me of Broken Bones. There's a few things that even lean towards like more melodic, like new wave of British heavy metal, but a lot of it's like kind of gruff vocal, you know, not too sandpapery, not too like Hodges foreskins, like more of a closer to Jerry A kind of thing, I'd say. Going with the vocals, fairly crossover-ish kind of crust stuff. Fun, good listen, good band. Punk as fuck, for sure. Nightfeeder, this is Jay Styles from State of Fear, Disrupt, Chicken Chest and the Bird Boys, several others. Crust royalty, this dude. All of his bands have a lot of similar elements, but all sound pretty unique in their own way, and Nightfeeder's no exception to that. I feel like this band has more of like a early 80s punk and disorderly Riot City kind of thing, but also at the same time is even gloomier sounding than Disrupt, just in terms of recording choices and just the way the riffs are placed out. It does have that pogo punk energy to it. Jay's, you know, signature vocal style, of course. If you like the way he sang in Disrupt and State of Fear, you'll like this. Couple of covers, The Victims and Miss Brucarna. Pretty obscure there, the covers. Good shit. Yeah, a lot of love for Scandinavian, European hardcore coming through as an influence on that. This is the Subversive Right live tape, live in Japan. Great New York City band there. Influenced a lot by early Sacrilege, I'd say, but there's plenty of other influences from the gamut of fast punk, fast, nasty, dirty punk rock kind of stuff going through. This is recorded really well. Band is on fucking fire, on point, everything's super tight. If you like their LP and their other recordings, I think they were 7 inches or demos. I have 2 LPs worth of material. If you like their other stuff, this is definitely a fine companion. Along with like the Warthog tape, I'm like, man, it's rare that I want to listen to the live stuff more than the recorded stuff, but that's where that falls for me. Then we've got the Bloodcrow Butcher Nigh Hell tape, which I believe is the last thing they did. I know members of this Boston band went on to form the Savage Heads, and you can kind of hear the transition in the sound on this. This is their earlier recordings are like D-beat, like noisy kind of D-beat stuff, but really well written, like catchy guitar work, super tight rhythm section and everything. Much like Chromosome, who I'll mention next. They managed to balance that sort of like noisy Discharge and Japanese kind of hardcore thing with street punk really well. And this gets a little bit more towards the UK side of things, I'd say, the UK 82 kind of side of things. Really fucking good. Probably my favorite recording by them. It's excellent. Happy to have everything by them. I believe somebody bootlegged or maybe did an official release of all their recordings on one cassette. I think it was a Polish or Southeast Asian release. I'd like to see something on vinyl collected of everything by Bloodcrow Butcher, because they did another tape, a 7-inch, and like I think they were on a comp or two. I think I have a 7-inch comp. They're a great fucking punk band from Boston. Yeah, I said I'd talk about Chromosome. This is another one of those tapes from that Discogs buy. This is, I believe, at least almost everything Chromosome did. Australian band. Fair amount of like noise to it, kind of D-beat stuff, but again, there's like a little touches of like Blitz influence on there. They get really anthemic at times. It's not all like a Disclosed Tragedy, just Crasher Crust all the way through. Although that's a strong influence as well. And man, live, these guys, fuck. I got to see them numerous times live, and pretty much every time was nuts. So don't think they're doing anything anymore, unfortunately. I know one of them via social media and stuff, and I think he's doing other projects right now. Then we've got King's X. Gretchen Goes to Nebraska. Interesting band. I feel like they've gotten a little bit more lip service in the past couple of years. People have kind of realized like how singular they were for their time, and it was essentially like proggy metal stuff when that wasn't a thing that a lot of people were doing at the time. And although it's not really my wheelhouse, I found myself listening to this a few times and really digging a couple of the songs, but I've got a long way to go before, I know any of the songs by name or anything like that. A lot to absorb, and I have a short attention span, if you couldn't tell. Then we got Smash, Skate Rock Volume 4, and Nagasaki Knight Rider. These are both compilations, bootleg compilations that I picked up on cassette. The thing about both of these, unfortunately, is the record. Like, they look awesome. They have the cool like old school stickers on the shells and all that. And they were cheap. They were like, I think like $5 or $6 each. The recording quality is not great. Like, whoever dubbed these could have maybe upgraded their stereo to something a little bit better before they did that, or at least cleaned the heads or whatever. They're super crackly and just don't sound that awesome. And I know we're talking about like 80s punk, so I don't know, maybe it's the original. I don't think so though. But anyway, Skate Rock Volume 4. This is one of the better skate rock comps. Most of the skate rock compilations are prohibitively expensive. I'll probably buy one or two of them at some point, when I save my pennies up. But it's nice to have this in the meantime. This has Steve Caballero, which is, key songwriter behind the Faction. I think this was considered a Faction song at one point or another. You Will Go. It's covered by Charles Bronson at one point. Tupelo Chain Sex, Scram, McShred, Cargo Cult. Yeah, it's a bunch of skate punk bands. There's a fair amount of filler on this, actually. I mean, Skate Master Tate, Skate Rock Rap. It's a novelty song, kind of funny for its time or whatever, but I'm good with that. But the McShred stuff is from McRad is great. The Faction Steve Caballero song is really good. Interesting to hear the Skip Engblom song. He was part of the whole Z-Boys thing. It was important for that group of folks. Nothing really stands out to me about the Cargo Cult songs. I don't remember, but I just wanted to have one of these because I always wanted them as a kid. And they never really, they were pressed by the magazine, so they didn't really have a lot that were made. Then we've got the Nagasaki Knight Rider comp. This is a who's who of classic Japanese punk and hardcore. I'll read off some of the list here. You've got Lip Cream, the Stalin, just talked about them. Auto, Cobra, Kuro, the Swankies, the Cums, LSD, Systematic Death, the Execute, Rose, GZ, more Lip Cream. And this is that early to mid 80s period of Japanese punk when it was going in the direction of hardcore. And I think a lot of the stuff was ahead of its time in terms of pure ferocity, with sounding like hardcore, but it was not to the level of obviously Gauze were one of the first to really push the envelope with speed, and Gizm, of course. This is a lot more, almost kind of more traditional punk rock kind of stuff, but it's also very weird and very aggressive because it comes from a completely different cultural kind of background than what was going on in the West. So cool historical document there. Another hardcore comp that was thrown together by just a fan. And I believe it's tied to a record label, 11 p.m. Records. I don't even remember how I came across this. I came across it on Facebook. Might have been the No Echo group, But just this one dude was like, hey, I'm putting together this tape that's just a history of Richmond hardcore, Richmond only. And that's interesting because there's been a lot of great music out of that town over the years. Everything from Gore to Avail to, oh, I don't know, Suppression, you know. So starting with the early 80s hardcore bands like White Cross and Honor Roll. It goes through Avail's on there, Strike Anywhere, Down to Nothing, Brace War, Naysayer, of course, touching on some of the grave mistake bands like Government Warning and Direct Control, Wasted Time, a bunch of newer bands that I have no idea who they are because I'm old and out of touch, like Haircut. Enforced is on here, a very good like thrash metal crossover band. So overall, a good comprehensive tape compilation of all the Richmond stuff. Very, very good. Very cool. Then you've got Martyrdod. I haven't been listening to this nearly as much as I've been listening to Wolf Brigade and Skit System and some others. This is another Swedish band. This is a lot more epic sounding. It's DB driven rhythmically, but there's a lot more like of a metallic edge to it. Vocalist sounds like early Tampa Lindbergh, like Red in the Sky Is Ours, just like voice box trying to jump out of the front of the throat, like screaming kind of vocal style, which really works for it. It's great, but it's almost more, I feel it's more akin to almost the stadium crust, like From Ashes Rise kind of shit, more so than the more traditionalist, like Skit System, early Wolf Brigade kind of stuff, which is a very fine hair to split, of course. You know, all those bands were pretty adept at their musical instruments and had elements of melody and metallic stuff going on. These guys just feel like they're pushing it over to the metal side of things a little bit more. And I know their guitarist ended up joining Skit System on Stigmata. This came out in 2004. This is a reissue on Plague Bearer. And the first thing I've heard by them, it's good. And then I've got this Artillery 2-on-1 Terror Squad Fear of Tomorrow. Marty showed this off recently. Dutch band, thrash metal. Vocals kind of have sort of a guy from Blessed Death, whatever his name is, and Bobby Blitz, and dude from Metal Church, that like shrieking, but you know, if he wanted to belt it out Halford style, he could do a workman-like job of it kind of vocal approach. Music is a little bit more like nastier towards the Teutonic side of things. This band was Dutch, I believe. But yeah, cool European thrash stuff from the day, late 80s, I think. 85, it looks like. Fear of Tomorrow came out. And Terror Squad came out in 86. This came out on RC. And it's a cutout. So I got it for something that wasn't exorbitant. Because it's a fucking tape and it shouldn't be. Then you got the Pleasure Leftists. This is a compilation on Feral Kid Records. Out of Buffalo. Cleveland band that was around and started in 2012. I think maybe still around in one form or another. I think their last recording was 17 or 18. And this is a lot of that modern punks playing post-punk goth kind of stuff. Super throbbing and heavy though, but tons of like weird effects and really great impassioned vocals. Kind of reminds me a little bit of early Susie and the Banshees. Here and there. Has a sound all of its own, though. Then we got a fun band. Fun band. Approach with caution here. What happens next? Another late 90s, early 2000s thrashcore revival band, bringing back bandanas and flipped up hats. You know, that was the thing at the time. Good band, though. Super fast, super tight. Lots of like almost blast beat kind of rhythms. Almost some like kind of Japanese influences, I'd say, on it here and there. Had Max Ward from Spaz playing. He was playing on bass, right? Drums. Duh. Yeah, of course. Max didn't play anything other than drums. Yeah, very good fucking band. Like their aesthetic at the time was like fun because it was bringing back like the 80s flipped up hat thing. Got kind of old kind of quick. And, you know, whatever. Music's really good. The vocals actually are close to somewhere in between, like, the dude from Bastard and, like, Roger Murray from Agnostic Front or Sothera from Crucifix. So, really good on that front, vocally, for sure. A lot of catchy songs. Better than I remembered it. Then you got Tipper Gore, Driven by Terror. I just bought this on a whim at my local shop there. This was a local band, if I'm not mistaken. They're like just a straight up thrash metal band. Yeah, they were from Providence, and they're called Tipper Gore, and it was $3. Like, how could I fucking say no? Nothing really. I'm trying to remember what this sounds like. I listened to it after I bought it, which was 4 or 5 months ago. I remember nothing about it other than it was like completely solid, like fun to listen to thrash metal. I remember it being straight up thrash metal, not really like goofy crossover, you know. But I'll have to go back to it because they're called Tipper Gore, like they're from Providence. And let's see, this Four Walls Falling cassette is neat. This is a reissue of the Culture Shock record. No, this is a reissue of the Food for Worms full length and all their 7-inches on one tape. Really neat shell, that huge print. These guys were from Richmond as well, right? Let me check and make sure. They were definitely from Baltimore, Richmond, D.C. area. Yes. Confirmed. Definitely from Richmond. They were a Richmond band. I actually saw them a bunch when I was very, very young. I was like 14 or 15. They played Syracuse a handful of times. They put out a record called Culture Shock, their first full length in 91, I want to say, somewhere around them, early 90s. One of the best hardcore records of the era. It's actually like a hardcore record, fast parts, and it's kind of a more mature version of like Youth of Today with really political lyrics, good like impassioned sung spoke vocals. You know, like I need to make sure that everybody understands what I have to say because what I have to say is very important. But great lyrics. So this is everything besides that record, which includes earlier versions of the songs from that first album, and then their second record, which is interesting. If you didn't grow up during a certain time, or you aren't a young person fetishizing music from that era that's very specific to that era, you might not like it. What I mean is, it has sort of a groove to it. It's almost like it's a few years behind nu metal. It's a little like on the weirdly rappy side. You know, I'm thinking stuff kind of like, I guess, Orange 9mm, Biohazard, you know, stuff along those lines, but still maintaining that sort of like leftist political thing with the lyrics. So cool and interesting, but again, I think it'll only appeal to a specific demographic, but a fine record in its own right. That's Food for Worms. Good shit. This got re-released on a local label, that Patient Zero Records. Shout out to them. They have a good distro. Dude's located somewhere in, I think, Western Mass. I've ordered from him before. He has a lot of good hardcore records. Might as well mention this, because that's right along that era of stuff. Transcend, Product of Greed. I just randomly bought this from this dude I know from Rochester, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. It's a single, so that's fun. You don't see those anymore. This came out on Doghouse Records. Put out a lot of hardcore, straight edge hardcore in those days. 4 songs. Yeah, Wound and... It's confusing because there's a song on this called Both Sides. And it's a song called Both Sides, but you're like, wait, both sides of the tape? Product of Greed, Labeled Ignorance, Wounded Society, Both Sides. Yeah, this is that kind of like... We've really been jamming Turning Point and Fugazi. We're floating away from, you know, the fast, like, punk-inspired kind of hardcore. We're learning how to play notes as opposed to just power chords, you know, that kind of thing. There's a little bit of swagger to it. Yeah, it's good. Like a lot of animal rights kind of stuff going on lyrically there. Got a couple of Depeche Mode tapes. I got Black Celebration and Some Great Reward. Again, like The Cure, like I like a lot of Depeche Mode stuff, but it's like one of those bands that I appreciate more on a greatest hits or singles collection kind of way. The early Depeche Mode singles, with I think it's like the 80 to 85 singles, some of my favorite stuff ever. I love those songs. The Catching Up with Depeche Mode record, love that shit. Same thing with New Order. I try to listen to whole albums and I get fucking bored. And again, it just might be my attention span. Some Great Reward does have the fucking bangers on it, though. You got Master and Servant, Blasphemous Rumors, one of my favorite songs ever. People Are People. I mean, great shit. There's not a lot of stuff standing out for me from Black Celebration. The title track is good. There's nothing. I mean, I only listened to this like once or twice in the kitchen when I was cooking. I'll have to spend more time with them. I mean, synth pop, dreary, synth driven, mopey British pop from the 80s. It can't be bad. It just didn't hit me. Despite the mood I am in for this stuff. Similar way, we got the Mission UK with God's Own Medicine, which, if I'm not mistaken, is their first. 87, yeah, I think that's right. I just showed off Children, their third record. I actually like this the most. This is one of those bands I feel like they only got slicker as they went on. You can definitely hear the "We were just the dudes and sisters of Mercy" like 5 minutes ago in this, and that's what I was looking for. So, good stuff. I like the guy's voice on this. It's obviously a little bit more like commercially acceptable than Andrew Eldritch's vocals, but Homeboy's guitar parts are killer on that. Just cool, like weirdly Middle Ages kind of sounding to me. I got a couple of Hellshock tapes. Great PNW crust. This is the demo, Ghosts of the Past, which is awesome. Like, it's every bit as good as the other recordings I've heard by them. Nice pro tape, too. And then Only the Dead Know the End of War. And this is a band, I mean, I missed out on these guys when they were around. I had no desire to listen to new crust in the mid-2000s. I was just into other shit. And I'm glad to have caught up with them. There's a strong amount of like death metal influence, specifically Bolt Thrower I'm hearing on it. Good like steamrolling, crushing riffage on it. Anybody who's into like that kind of, heavy, relatively simplistic death metal, like, Gorefest or anything like that, definitely give Hellshock a shot. It's kind of bringing back like the sort of Prophecy of Doom, Deviated Instinct, heavier side of crust, and of course a lot of the faster parts are sort of dischargey too. But yeah, fucking great band that I completely slept on for 15 years or so. Here's a fun one. Warrior Soul, Drugs, God, and the New Republic. It's such a weird time that this came out. It was right prior to Nirvana busting out, getting huge, like maybe even the same year. This came out in 91, so right around that time. But you could tell people were getting sick of hair metal, and I think like in some ways Guns N' Roses and the Cult were sort of a paradigm shift. They were a little dirtier and scarier, lyrically was a little darker and stuff like that. And somewhere in there, in all of that, like before grunge, and like this is like sort of like sleaze rock, but all the lyrics are sort of political. It's like left-leaning sleaze rock. I don't know how else to describe it. It's really good. It's a little bit heavier. Like if you like the stuff like on Slave to the Grind by Skid Row, that's a little bit more like real, true to like real metal in terms of heaviness, you might be down with this. Like a lot of records that came out around this time, like I can do without like maybe 15 or 20 minutes worth of music on this. Same thing with that Armored Saints Symbol of Salvation record. Like, let's trim it down, trim the fat a little bit, but it is good. It's good fist pumping fucking rock and roll, leaning into metal. I could have sworn I talked about this, but it's right here in front of me. So if I'm double dipping, whatever. Mind Rot, Dawning. So kind of like in tandem with Morgion, this is early 90s doom death from California. Kind of, from what I've gathered, like these guys kind of have like a little bit of a background in like the power violence and crust scenes. Like they've been on some comps with some bands like that, and it's just perfectly fucking punishing, slow, agonizing death metal with the doom metal kind of spirit to it. And you can just tell like those bands, like Morgion and Mind Rot, like they've got their own thing going on compared to My Dying Bride or Disembowelment or any of their contemporaries from across the ocean in either direction. There's just something uniquely desperate in a yank sort of way with these dudes. And Morgion, who are also great. Got a cult best of that's a lot of fun here. High Octane Cult. High Octane Cult, $3. Good stuff. This is a very, very good, like, pretty long compilation covering most of their career up to 1996. I don't know what songs on this are from that era, but it's got, you know, Wildflower, Wild Hearted Son, Sweet Soul Sister, She Sells Sanctuary, But Who's Buying? Firewoman, Little Devil, you know, it's got all the hits, and it's got some newer tracks that, from what I remember, are pretty good from later on. And getting down. I'm almost done with this. A couple more. Got Gruesome Stuff Relish, Last Men in Gore. Yeah, I wanted something by these guys. You know, I don't require a lot. I just want some fun, kind of thrashy gore grind from Italy. Horror themes, quick songs, you know. Side B alone has 21 songs on it. Look how long the tape is, you know. It's catchy in its own way. Fun gore grind shit, you know. Giallo grind. And not too much else to say other than that, really. And then finally, we've got Disconnectos with the same friggin' photo that's on the cover of every album ever. This is their collection of singles, 7 inches and stuff. I talked about their LP a couple of updates back when I was talking about death rock stuff. Yeah, like Spanish language, kind of gloomy punk rock with some post-punk elements from Texas. This has a little bit more of like peaks and valleys in terms of like there's some punker songs and some gloomier songs on here, especially the self-titled EP that are the first 3 songs on here. Kind of jumps around a little bit with different textures, which is always good. But yeah, fucking catchy ass band, really good shit. This is like a Polish compilation tape, which I love those Polish and Southeast Asian tapes that have everything by the band. I'm obviously fond of them because I've been talking about them for half an hour now. Well, that should do it for the cassettes. And I hope you are ready for me to talk about more cassettes, because I got my trade-in from Mario from Costa Rica, and I have tons and tons of wild-ass metal from all over the world to talk about, from Uruguay, from Costa Rica, Panama, fucking Russia, all kinds of fun death and black and thrash metal. So I'll be getting back on that train soon. I got to listen to all of them. I've got a lot of homework to do, and it's going to be fucking fun. Yeah, subscribe if you want, like, comment, you know what to do. Have a good night. Bye.